Good morning. My name is Evan Dorn, and I'll be your moderator today. Today's webinar is presented by Amper Technologies. This presentation covers digitization and how it can keep businesses agile in a volatile economic landscape. Today's speaker, Amper CEO and founder Akshat Thurani, will discuss tips for adopting a digitization mindset, actionable ways to build out systems to ensure adoption, and real-world examples of how machine shops start their digitization journey. After the presentation, we will have a Q&A session. Please use the Q&A tab on the right side of your screen to submit questions. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and you will be able to access it on demand shortly after the presentation and Q&A conclude. With that out of the way, let's get started.
Thank you, Evan. Hi, everyone. My name is Akshat, and I'm really excited to be here at this webinar today. As Evan mentioned, we're going to be talking about digitization strategies to improve your operations in any economy. If you open up the news, it's been crazy headlines, and there's a ton of volatility in the market today. And really, the goal of this webinar is to go over some strategies that shops of any size can adopt to weather the storm and take advantage of the opportunities that emerge in this new economy. So, by way of introduction, I grew up in manufacturing my whole life. My family's been in manufacturing for 4 generations. So I grew up going to the shop floor every other week and built a passion for shop floors. And graduating college, I saw a huge gap in just the tools available for manufacturers like my dad, who was still stuck on Excel, whiteboards, and really didn't have information at the fingertips to answer questions about what is happening on the shop floor. And it's been a really exciting journey working with hundreds of manufacturers across the country. And I'm excited to share some stories today on how machine shops of all sizes have been able to really begin that journey in digitization and better empower the shop floor. So there's a term called black swan events. These are unexpected, massive events. And over the last couple of years, I think we've all become desensitized to these massive events, whether it's COVID, global conflict, or anything else. And the backdrop of all of this, we've also become desensitized and have normalized manufacturing issues, whether it's supply chain delays, skills and the talent gap in the market, the economic downturn that we're going through at the moment, as well as just basic things like material availability. And so in the context of all this, how can machine shops really weather the storm? And the effects of an economic downturn on manufacturing are really felt more viscerally in a way. To get parts out of the door, you have to be in the shop floor, in person, with a skilled workforce, working expensive assets. And there's a term called the bullwhip effect, where small changes on the customer end in demand have magnified impact in the swings that manufacturers face. And so this means that, when demand for products drop, or you're unable to come in person because of the pandemic, or the labor force is impacted, whether it's by retirement or simply too high of a cost for skilled labor, there's some real challenges that emerge. And every manufacturer in this condition is pushed to do more with fewer resources. There's a really interesting book called Anti-Fragile that I highly recommend anyone read. And it talks about the concept where some things that actually benefit from shocks in the system and thrive when exposed to volatility, randomness, disorder, and stressors. So you have fragile on one end on the spectrum, but on the other end, it's not really brittle or solid. It's anti-fragile, things that become better and are augmented when there's more volatility. And so this concept is fascinating, and it's a big question as to how can all of our businesses become anti-fragile, where we actually thrive when the market faces a lot of issues. And anti-fragile manufacturers can use these shocks to grow revenue by responding faster than other competitors that might not have the systems to respond quickly, remain insulated from labor availability by being lean and having a talented workforce that you are able to develop in house, and enter or disrupt markets where existing incumbents have certain cost structures or processes that make them susceptible to new entrants. And so volatility creates opportunity that manufacturers can take advantage of, but it certainly requires a lot of systems and proactive thinking to be in those shoes. And it requires manufacturers to be data driven, build the digital infrastructure for making their operations scalable, both on the upside as well as the downside, in response to the demand. And so technology really plays a big role in getting there. Manufacturers that reported higher levels of technology adoption and digitization were likely to report adverse workforce impacts as a result of the pandemic, lesser adverse impacts. Um, this was a survey done by IMEC, one of the MEPs in Illinois. And every report that you read when it comes to technology adoption in Industry 4.0, it always points to higher efficiencies and profitability for manufacturers. In fact, in 2017, there was a survey done of roughly 35,000 US manufacturers, and the top 5 percentile reported being data driven, using technology, and investing in automation. And so, through McKinsey's survey, it was found that folks that adopted higher levels of Industry 4.0 had inventory cost reductions, higher labor productivity, lower machine downtime, and as well as higher throughput on the shop floor. Having the right data can also empower you to have better forecasting, whether it's in your labor requirements, whether it's in capex, material, or any other variable on the shop floor. Having leading indicators on the shop floor can really point towards how to forecast better. And then finally, is around quality systems, having a real-time pulse on what is happening on the shop floor, where the quality bottlenecks are, and process reliability drives higher quality improvements as well. And so I want to walk through a quick summary of 5 digitization strategies for digitizing your operations and sustaining its adoption. The first step is to automate, which is to move away from any kind of manual data collection towards a fully automated and real-time process of collecting core information on the shop floor. This is really the foundational piece, because without good data delivered on time, it's really hard to drive those decisions and empower folks on the shop floor. And a manufacturing shop floor is one of the most dynamic environments, whether it's people, machines, material. There's just so much happening that automating it is the first step in building that foundation. Then is really when the process starts, in a way, which is determining your goals and setting a standard for lagging indicators like on-time delivery, margins, and so on, as well as leading indicators around OEE, downtime, and so on, around part numbers and employees. And using this, you can create dashboards to highlight issues. And so I think it's a healthy mindset to balance the lagging versus the leading, since you can then create levers for what that to impact your bottom line and what your customers care about. The next is review, which is to build a cadence and systems for actually reviewing this data. We found that manufacturers who have strong systems, whether it's a weekly review and using data at those production meetings, KPI review meetings, have just found more sustainability in actually looking at the data and discussing true root causes. The fourth step is to improve, which is once you've established this review cadence, now you can go ahead and start doing continuous improvement projects as it relates to your goals. Having root cause data and being able to Pareto out the top issues affecting your shop floor allows folks to focus the 80-20 of what to prioritize from a continuous improvement standpoint. There's a million problems to always solve on the shop floor, but without having this data, prioritizing the right continuous improvement activities, especially for smaller machine shops that may not have large, lean manufacturing teams, is almost necessary. And then finally is empower, which is to implement digital tools for the shop floor to replace manual processes, improving communication and workflows, and simplifying self-management. We're all wired the same way, and it's so important to know, are you winning or losing in the day-to-day? And often for folks on the shop floor, it can be hard to answer that simple question, which is, am I having a good day or a bad day? And so providing those tools to allow folks to better self-manage really bring sustainability in these systems. So we're going to talk over a couple of case studies and stories of how machine shops of different sizes have been able to digitize the shop floors and really improve the way they discuss the business and make decisions. So the first case study is around car machine and tool. They have about 10 CNCs, 15 employees, and like most machine shops, they're a high mix, low volume machine shop, and it's really exciting. It's their 50th anniversary as a business this year, and they knew that setup times was a big bottleneck, anecdotally, and wanted to really improve it, but didn't have the information to drive those actions. And so they started out with the goal of collecting accurate data, create a baseline, and measure improvements on a daily basis. And they partnered with us to gain intelligence on the shop floor, see what's happening in real time, and we're able to make better business decisions. There's a saying which is, if you're not making chips, you're not making money, and what gets measured gets improved. And so this was really a long journey in ensuring that the right information is being captured and daily changes and improvements are being made. So the goals were to, again, understand utilization and make better decisions, whether it's buying a new machine, whether it's investing in new tooling, or investing in robotics to save that tending time. And the second is to create an accurate data-driven KPI and a baseline to improve on. And the results were interesting, where as expected, the utilization was much lower than what an ERP system or any other manual data collection system might reflect. And it helped the team align the processes with the core KPI, which was machine uptime, to start making improvements. On a daily and weekly basis, the shop would be talking about how did we do yesterday, what is the plan today, and that changed the nature of conversations, where the right issues were highlighted and bubbled up to the surface. And also, it justified investing in a new machine by seeing that lights out automation through robotics had a big impact. I think this is a great story because it just shows that technologies like this are accessible for machine shops of all sizes, not just high volume, automotive manufacturing. The next is around Belden Universal. They're a machine shop here in Chicago, and they actually produce universal joints. So a variety of different machines, different processes, and again, a high mix operation with a lot of different SKUs. This shop had 22 CNC machines, 46 employees, and as a data-driven shop, they spent hours and hours every day and every week collecting OEE data, cycle time data, downtime data to really make those investments and improvements. But still, this data was delayed. It was often inaccurate, but just by the nature of having to manually collect this information. And so the goal was to replace the manual tracking system and automate it as much as possible. And they ran a process and they worked with Amper to digitize the machines. A big factor was just the resources needed in getting a system up and running. As a company with a smaller IT team, having a system that's easier to get up and running was really important. But taking a step back, the goals were to save time in reporting and analysis, improve visibility in real time. These are like $500,000 machines, but it was really hard to tell, a basic question like, are they running or not? And then finally, using data to drive lean initiatives. Over the last couple of years, as we all know, interest rates have been, all over the place, and every manufacturer has suddenly thought about investing in new machines to unlock capacity and take advantage of longer term rates. And the results of having this real-time data and automated OEE created over $1 million in cost avoidance by seeing areas of improvements in existing machines where the capacity was available and simply higher productivity was needed. The second was, on a couple of machines, seeing over $60,000 a year in increased machine uptime and labor savings. They introduced a new metric, which was, time to first start, which was essentially around late starts on the machines. And they saw across the board, by measuring this information, roughly a 5-minute decrease in those late starts. So that was the low hanging fruit, and just adding a lot of time back into capacity. And then finally is 40 hours a month or so in data collection that was automated, adding time back to skilled engineers and operators. Another exciting case study was working with Lear Manufacturing. So this company it's an employee-owned business, and they make temperature-controlled storage units. This is a great example of one of the products, which is an ice storage unit. They hold a market share, but struggled to keep up with capacity, and really wanted to understand what were the root causes holding them back in getting parts out. As you can imagine, with a product like this, they had a variety of machine types, and whether it's brake presses all the way to welders, and understanding where the bottlenecks were was really hard, because these were different types of machines, different ages, didn't have an easy way to measure this information. And so the goal was to understand true factory utilization and base decisions on accurate and reliable data. And again, given the variety of machine types and the low IT resources available on the team, they wanted a system that was simple, easy to get up and running, and would track a variety of vintages of machines. And so the goals were to understand the root causes of where the bottlenecks in productions might be, reducing the lead times for the customers by having higher throughput on the existing machines, the existing processes. And again, when it comes to investing in new machines, having the data to validate that purchase, but also once it's invested, ensuring that one is able to validate that it was actually used against its goal. And so, Lear started doing visual management with Ampere. So they set up TV screens across the shop floor to show what's happening in real time. And they saw a 10 to 15% improvement after publishing these numbers on a daily basis. They also saw that there was a ton of work that they could insource at the shop, that given the capacity that was available and free. And so they sourced $300,000 back into the machine shop that was otherwise at a higher cost and delayed. And they had almost a 35% improvement in their panel bender utilization. I think this is going back to the overall theme of the talk. Being anti-fragile really means having flexibility in using your existing resources, whether the market goes up or down. And as we've seen with these 3 different case studies, that having data has unlocked, whether it's making the most of the existing team, the existing machines, and also adding back time, valuable time, to skilled workers on the team. And so not digitizing is a huge missed opportunity for US manufacturers. Today, there are a ton of tailwinds, whether it's reshoring, supply chain demand and backlogs that are still relatively high. And a smart factory is going to improve profits, improve customer relationships, and help manufacturers adapt in a volatile environment. Today, even customers that send out work to different machine shops want to know the status of their work orders, and ensure that on-time delivery is going to happen. And having real-time data on what is happening on the shop floor is going to improve those relationships by giving accurate answers in real time and building trust through information. But also, more importantly, by having higher efficiency on the shop floor, you can actually get parts out on time without having to necessarily pay for overtime or buying expensive new machines. So I want to summarize the 5 different strategies for digitizing your shop floor. It starts with automating data collection, identifying KPIs, reviewing the results on a cadence, improving through continuous improvement initiatives, and empowering your shop floor to sustain this transition. Um, Again, the foundation starts with having that automated real-time visibility and scaling it out in the right way. And so we've seen with Belden, Lear, and Car Machine adopting a solution to automate data collection and track actual utilization resulted in defining a baseline. In fact, what we've seen is over thousands of assets that the average machine utilization for high mix, low volume operations is just 28%. And so connecting to that reality around what the baseline truly is a massive unlock because now you can start to do improvements by having that accurate information. The second is leveraging real time data and analytics to fuel CI initiatives. So, across all these companies, they were able to collect why the machines weren't running and prioritize the resources accordingly. In fact, one of these customers even had downtime reason codes around certain titles in the roles they needed, like a setup machinist or an operator. And by collecting data on how much time was being lost through the labor shortage, it justified reallocating resources in training as well as compensation for setup machinists, for example. And then finally is through empowering the shop floor with visual management, communication tools, and so on, they were able to get the savings, productivity, and quality. And so when you're looking for a solution to really sustain these systems, some of the things that we would suggest looking for is around no hidden fees, having a clear price for the entire system, including whether it's the installation, the PLC, upgrades, if at all, IT costs, and so on. And so really you want to understand the total cost when it comes to your digitization strategy. And often these are a collection of a couple of different technologies. So just having complete insight into what that looks like. The second is time to value. A lot of manufacturers today have, a sub 12-month ROI expected timeline, and so ensuring that the time to value is there. Working with all kinds of machines on your shop floor is so important because most shops have a mix of machines. Some of them are new, some of them are older. And finally, is customer support. Industry 4.0 is still relatively new, and ensuring that you have the support and training to make these successful is critical. But we all know that OEE is a term that's been around for a long time. I think right from the 90s, OEE was a theme that was being talked about. And but the reality is that most shops don't have a system like this. And the reason is, limited IT resources really holds back the implementation of such technologies. Machine integrations are really tough because, again, PLCs of different brands and ages don't talk the same language. Unclear use of data, which is what do you do once you do collect this information? And finally, is total costs, which is most machine shops are on a budget when it comes to investing in these initiatives. And so with all these combined, it was a big motivation for us to at Amper to create a technology that is built out of these constraints and solves these underlying issues. And so we're more than happy to talk about it. Hopefully you found the case studies and strategies relevant. For what it's worth, we offer a free trial on 2 machines where you can take this technology out for a spin and use it for a month to understand baseline on your machines. Often, folks put these on bottleneck machines so they can understand what's truly happening. But certainly reach out to us if you're interested in learning more about this. So those are some of the core ideas that I had to discuss today. Happy to take on any questions, whether it's about the case studies, about the strategies, or the technology itself.
So yes, thank you, Akshat. We are now officially moving to our Q&A period. As a reminder, please use the Q&A section on the right side of your screen to submit questions. Without further ado, let's get underway. Akshat, how do you start getting buy-in from your company to adopt more digitization?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's just so many stakeholders involved, whether it's the finance team, whether it's supervisors or engineers. I think when it comes to getting true buy-in from across the team, it's helpful to have a singular metric that the whole company can rally around. So, obviously, on-time delivery, cost, QCD essentially is a great starting point. But another one that changes on a weekly basis is around machine uptime. Again, if you're not making chips, you're not making money. And so, what we've seen is aligning around a central core KPI, and then having those conversations around empowering the shop floor, and asking questions around why has been really effective. So that way, it's not simply Big Brother or just data tracking for the sake of it. It's really to bubble up the issues and empower each team and each person on the shop floor.
Sure.
Yeah.
And how does digitization help shops be less affected by changes in labor availability?
Yeah. A great example is one of our customers. They again didn't want to ramp up their headcount by because they had a lot of backlog in that moment, and so wanted to have a more flexible capacity structure. And so by collecting this information, they noticed that so much of the time was being lost in loading, unloading material, and there was just a lot of capacity time invested by the team in manual processes. And so by collecting this information, they were able to invest in automation and robotics to automate those processes. And conversely, by seeing where the training gaps might be in the existing team, the data, for example, is able to show when certain operators struggle with setup times, when for the same part number, different operators are running it differently, um, with different efficiency levels. So essentially, by having this information, you're able to justify investments in automation and robotics, and conversely, get any waste out of the system by investing in continuous improvement and training.
Sure, thank you. And what are some common trends that usually come up when a shop starts collecting data?
Yeah, when you start collecting data, it's often really shocking to see the numbers because there's certain biases that are built on what or assumptions built on what the reality is on the shop floor. So I think often when folks install our shop floor tracking system, this pause and is this data even accurate? Because I thought we were running at 50 or 60%. The system says it's running at 30%. That's pretty far off. But I think it's a blessing and a curse in a way, which is, folks were able to make a lot of money and run the shop despite having low utilization. So it's kind of all upside from there. But however, I think the challenge is around adoption and the right messaging. We've seen successful deployments where the operational leaders really embrace this technology by making it a team initiative. And conversely, when it's treated as a way to monitor people or be big brother in a way, that's not been as successful. You really want to make it a bottoms up initiative where each person is bought in as far as possible. But I think the numbers are always really shocking because they're so different from the assumptions at times.
Sure. Thank you. I guess moving on to specifically talk a little bit about Amper's solution, how does Amper track machine maintenance schedules?
Yeah. So most maintenance schedules are either emergency maintenance issues or on a calendar basis, like uh, annual inspections or annual PM activities. With Amper, folks are able to actually set PM schedules based on machine utilization. So you can set a schedule that after 1,000 hours of machine actually in production, um, you would do say a filter change or a spindle inspection or and so on. And so that way you're able to avoid over maintaining machines that are not used much or under maintaining machines that are used a lot.
Okay. And how does Amper and other digitization technologies, how do they integrate with existing Internet of Things sensors?
Yeah, so we have standard inputs into the system. So you're able to get outputs, whether it's a light curtain, whether it's other industrial sensors and actuators into the system. So we're able to talk with a lot of different sensors out there already. In addition, we have an API that can integrate with other softwares, for example, ERP systems. And so it's able to really um, merge with the existing industrial sensors as well as the ERP systems on the shop floor.
Sure. And is returning back to just Amper itself, um, does Amper have any kind of solutions or methodologies, functions for helping track tool life?
Um, Not quite. A lot of our customers do set maintenance schedules on long running jobs based on the tools, but by understanding the downtime caused by tooling issues, that's been a way folks have done continuous improvement activities. But tool life isn't particularly a capability in the system today.
Yeah, okay. So we have another question asking about Amper's suitability and other digitalization software suitability for high mix, low volume shops. Does it set any kind of a standard for cycle times?
Yeah. So the system is able to automatically measure the cycle times, and you do get reports by part number what the plan or estimate versus actuals are. And so that way you're able to identify that is it a productivity issue or a quoting issue. So you're able to see the standard versus actual by automating the cycle time measurement.
Yeah, all right. Final call for questions, I suppose. Give you all a minute. All right. Thank you to everyone who submitted a question, and thank you again to Akshat. As a reminder, this webinar was recorded and will be available on demand soon. Thank you again for watching today, and have a great weekend.
Thank you. Likewise.